Looking for music that lifts your spirit and fills your heart? Experience the powerful sound of the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. Now streaming on all your favorite music platforms. Find the Tabernacle Choir on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Pandora. Let the music of the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square inspire you today and every day. Whether you're at home, in the car, or on the go, enjoy the beauty of their world-renowned sound anytime. The Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, streaming now.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
DJ and PK brought to you in part by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN1 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. I bet there are a lot of people who work at Trajan Wealth who would like to know how the recruiting is going for Utah and BYU. And fortunately, we have Brandon Huffman here, national recruiting analyst for On3.com and Rivals, to talk about exactly that topic. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. We are curious how the Utes and Cougars are doing. It'd be easy to ask you who the best recruit they had is, but maybe there's one that maybe surprised you more, or you think is more undervalued, someone that they should be excited about that they don't necessarily know about because they're not sitting on the most stars and haven't been talked about since they were, 15 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I would say each school has a guy like that. I really like what Utah has done, coming out to the state of Arizona, where I now live, and getting a commitment from Jonah Lubno, who is a quarterback. I got a chance to see him play back in October. I mean, he's 6'3", 215 pounds, and kind of was a late emerger. Most of his recruiting attention had come from the Big Sky, but there's a guy who's 6'3", 215, and he's running an 11 flat 100-meter time, so he's a big athlete. Wasn't blessed with enormous amounts of skill position talent, and Utah kind of played the long game, obviously understanding that Brody Rudnicki, who they had targeted, was going to serve his mission and wouldn't be a 28. So they made sure that they got a 27, and they got Lubno, who's a big athletic guy who can run, which I know Utah is looking for in a quarterback. They want somebody that can get around and move out of the pocket. But now if you can get it from a guy who's 6'3", you're absolutely going to take somebody like that. And then I think on the BYU side of things, I really like Titan DeJong. I think he could play a number of positions. I think he's just a football player. And I think that's one of those phrases that, I throw around when a guy is, you put him in a position, he's going to make a play, whether it's on offense, whether it's on defense, but he's just a guy that's a football player. So I think from a value standpoint of a couple of guys that aren't necessarily rated super high, those are guys that I think are going to do some damage for the Utes and the Cougs respectively.
For 20-some years under Kyle Whittingham, they had a pattern of recruiting, right? Wasn't necessarily the highest-ranked kids, but they'd come in, be tough-minded, get better, and go on to the NFL, many of them. We've seen that. And now, obviously, he's gone. Morgan Scalley is somewhat of a disciple of Kyle Whittingham. Just from a general overview, has the recruiting changed much at all, or anything that you've noticed that is different? Or is it more of the same? They still get those same types of players? Because it seems here of late they've been getting a bunch of commitments.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we were just having this conversation up at the opening finals this weekend that nobody has consistently made recruiting sites look bad than Utah. They go get a player that nobody knows of, or that they beat out maybe some, G5 schools for, and then they develop that guy into a draft pick, or they develop that guy into a conference player of the year. And so I think that that's what Utah's always going to do better than just about anybody in the country, is evaluate and develop. And I think that even though there's been a changing of the guard from a staff point of view, I don't think that that's going to change from a mentality point of view. I think that's at times you see, there's exceptions like a Kirby Smart and a Dan Lanning, a couple of defensive guys who, have the resources available and the draw nationally to go get elite classes. Nick Saban did as well. But I think a lot of defensive coaches, they want to win with an identity. They want to win with toughness, and they're going to go find guys that fit what they want to do schematically and aren't necessarily the guys that have the most stars, that aren't ranked the highest, but they're going to be the guys that they know fit into this program. And, I look at a couple of defensive linemen that they've got. guy like Tiki Teeples, Jack Henderson, where, Utah was Jack Henderson's lone Power 4 offer. I think Tiki Teeples had maybe one other Power 4 offer, and it came from Oklahoma State early on. Then Utah offered. Then a couple other Big 12 schools started to get involved, but Utah was one of the first schools in on him. Well, where has Utah consistently and traditionally done the best job of not just evaluating, but then developing? It's been on the defensive line. So these guys are kind of, boilerplate for what Utah has done so well, going back to Kyle Whittingham's, when he really took off in the Pac-12. And I think that's going to continue under Morgan Scalley. They want to beat you up front. They want to beat you with guys that are bigger, stronger, tougher. And I think that none of that's going to change, because that's kind of the mentality that Morgan Scalley wants his team to have. And I think there's two guys in this class that kind of speak to that.
Over the time Kyle was here, we got used to exactly what you said as far as the line of scrimmage. The secondary was always really good. Over time, he upgraded the linebackers and the tight ends. Running backs were usually really good. There were two positions he struggled to recruit. One was quarterback, one was wide receiver. Now, quarterback got better. They got 2 really good years out of Huntley, and he started for 3. And they got 2 good years out of Cam, and he was hurt 3 other years. And they just got a good year out of Dampier in the transfer portal. So quarterback was getting up to speed, and you've addressed that a little bit with the kid they signed out of Arizona. Wide receiver never got figured out. Is there any sign that Morgan will recruit wide receiver differently and better, or should we just think, hey, the acorn didn't fall far from the oak, and you're not going to be perfect, so that's just going to be a bit of a struggle there, but they're going to be good at a lot of other positions?
No, that's actually a great segue, because one of the commitments that they got on Monday was from Darnell Jackson out of Texas, a speed guy. I mean, a guy that can flat out run, 5'11", 165 pounds, but he's got some juice, he's got some acceleration, and I think that that's the kind of player that if you're Utah, you want. You want a guy that's going to be able to stretch the field. You want a guy that can give you options rather than maybe getting a bunch of possession receivers, guys that are going to move the chains, guys that are really good at downfield blocking to allow you to run the ball, but you need some weapons that are going to be able to stretch the field and get separation and allow you to go vertical. I think if you look at the Big 12 and how it's been, clear in the last couple of years that, you've got to be able to have some offense in order to compete in the conference. If you can add some speed, and I think this is where Utah already having a tie into the state of Texas well before they joined the Big 12, again, pays off going down into Texas to get Jackson. But then they also have a Dylan Sykes, a bigger receiver out of Southern California. They got Jackson Nikahu from right there in their backyard at Davis High School, who is another kid that can run. He's not the biggest. He's about 5'11", 185, but he can run too. So I think that there has been a kind of a clear expression of desire to get speed at the receiver positions. And, they're not going to go away entirely and become this, air raid, run and shoot offense like we saw in the 90s and the 2000s in college football. But they're going to be adding a lot more passing to the offense. But I still think at the end of the day, again, most defensive coaches, they want to win by just punishing you at the line of scrimmage. And that means they want to run the ball down your throat 80% of the time that they can. However, you've got to have some diversity in the offense from a scheme standpoint. So I think that that's been a clear addressing by Utah this cycle, and I think it's being met.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast!
An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Who's doing well recruiting-wise in the Big 12?
I mean, the easy answer is always going to be Texas Tech, because I think they're recruiting with a completely different set of circumstances in their favor. And I think that they're, obviously it doesn't hurt that they won last year. It doesn't hurt that they've got the resources to do so. But I also think what helps them is even before it became clear that they had the resources at their leisure is that Joey McGuire, being a head coach in the state of Texas as a high schooler, as a high school head coach, gave him connections everywhere. So, they're one of those schools, though, that they're not just it's recruiting well from a conference standpoint. They're the only Big 12 school right now that is currently finding themselves in the top 25 and even the top 30 nationally until you get down to Kansas State. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Texas Tech is becoming a bigger name brand. It sure seems like we've spent this entire offseason talking about Texas Tech in some capacity, whether it was Braden Sorsby, whether it was Joey McGuire, whether it was Cody Campbell, whoever it is. But these kids are seeing that Texas Tech made it to the playoffs last year. They just saw one of their players get drafted in the second round, even though he's technically a Stanford grad, in David Bailey. But they're also seeing that Texas Tech has the resources, which is driving a lot of recruits' interest in the Red Raiders. So I think they're just on a different level right now because they've got a lot of things working in their favor, to catch my drift.
Brandon Huffman joined us, national recruiting analyst for On3.com and Rivals. Brandon, I can't believe PK has restrained himself. This is so much discipline and poise from PK. You brought up kids leaving Arizona. He went to Arizona State. We've been doing this show literally for decades, and he's always said the Arizona schools struggle to bring kids home. This transfer window is helping them bring kids back. They're getting a little bit there. Do you think these coaching staffs who both had a little early success here are going to be able to keep kids home and sustain it? Or between 115-degree days and a lack of NIL money, is it a real uphill battle for these two? Or do you think they're making headway?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's two answers to that question. I think both are very dissimilar to each other despite sharing the state. I think with Arizona, that's a basketball school. It's always going to be a basketball school, and that's going to be what the priority of the athletic department is going to be. And I'm not to say that Arizona basketball is going to spend as much as Arizona football is, but if you're a big-name elite basketball player, Arizona is going to appeal to you because you're going to get developed, you're going to get drafted, and you're probably going to get paid handsomely to go there. Whereas Arizona football, I mean, Brent Brennan is more salt of the year type of guy. Not to say Tom Millard isn't, I don't know him, but I've known Brent Brennan a long time since he was receivers coach at San Jose State. And they've done a really good job of focusing in Southern California, where Brent Brennan recruited heavily when he was at San Jose State and at Oregon State. But they're going to try to recruit some of the local kids. It's just they've got to go into the bigger metro area, which is right there in Arizona State's backyard. I think the flip side to that is Kenny Dillingham sits on kind of a landmine, or a gold mine in Arizona, especially being in the greater Phoenix area. But like you said, these kids have this desire to go national. They see the ability to go and play on the national stage. And I think you look at, the class this year, the top 10 players in the state, a number of them had Arizona State offers, but Will Mensel, who is in Chandler, goes to Oregon. You've got Noah Roberts, who plays at Basha High School, the state champion. He goes to Texas. Now, they did get a gigantic win in landing Jake Hildebrand, who's the top offensive lineman in the state. He spurned Utah and Texas Tech to go to Arizona State and stay home. But he's a little bit more of an anomaly. And Arizona State does this thing called the golden ticket, where the first day that they're wink, legally allowed to communicate with underclassmen is when they offer the local kids. And it's kind of a double-edged sword. You by maybe playing by a set of rules that Herm Edwards and his staff didn't, it hurts them, but at the same time, it allows other schools to throw out an offer earlier, and now you're the 35th offer for a kid from Phoenix rather than the first offer for a kid from Phoenix. So I think, Dillingham has kind of made it clear he wants to recruit locally, but if these kids are going to be a little bit unobtainable, then he'll go into Texas. They've had a really good pipeline into the state of Texas in the last couple of years, and they've recruited, outside of the state of Arizona, and then they're kind of the rebound. If it doesn't work out for you nationally, when you go somewhere else, you're going to have a home here at Arizona State. And so he makes sure not to kind of, torch those relationships, but give those guys an opportunity. If it doesn't work out, you can always come home.
Brandon, we really appreciate you joining us, and this interview isn't over yet, but I want to establish some groundwork going forward. We never on this show, as an Arizona State grad, say the name Herm Edwards. If you must say it, it is preceded by an expletive, and you know the expletive, so we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's a holy day. I didn't want to use it on, and I didn't want to get banned from the show.
So those are the ground rules going forward as a loyal Sun Devil. How much has the transfer portal changed high school recruiting?
I get that question every single year because you see the tweets that the transfer portal is killing high school recruiting. I don't think that's true because the reality is these guys have to come from somewhere, right? I think what it's done is it's 100% sped up the recruiting process. Now, obviously, we used to be in an era where the first Wednesday of February was signing day. Then it scooted to the third week in December to be the first day that you could sign. Now it's the first Wednesday in December that could actually put pen to paper. But tomorrow, July 1st, is kind of the unofficial signing day. I mean, Rivals is doing a summer signing day show because 90% of classes are going to be done by tomorrow. These schools want their heavy lifting done. They want to be able to go to the lake or the river or the beach in July before they get back in time for fall camp. All the camps are over. The dead period's in place. So I think that schools want the majority of their roster or their recruiting class done so that way those personnel directors can spend the entire fall watching college football games around the country, and especially, the G5 level or the FCS level, and find out who are the guys that we want in the portal when they come. Now we're seeing that the portal is opening a day earlier this year. It's going to, as I saw last week, it's going to be voted on, but now it looks like it's going to open on January 1st as opposed to January 2nd. And instead of it being a 15-day window, it's going to be a 10-day window. So it's going to make the urgency that much greater. But the reality is all it's doing is it's making better recruiting classes for G5 schools, for FCS schools, for Division II and Division III. I mean, Trinidad Chambers, y'all saw it, take him to his team to the semifinals last year. He was a Division II quarterback out of high school. What's happening now is that those smaller schools are getting better players out of high school because instead of signing 25 guys in a class, schools might sign 18 guys in a class. Well, that means the trickle-down effect is now allowing for better classes. The problem is those FCS schools are only going to get that kid for 2 years instead of 4 years like they used to. If you watch the division or the FCS national championship game last January, I think Twitter was mostly abuzz about saying, oh, well, this running back's going to look really good at, this Power 4 school next year. Oh, this quarterback is going to be awesome as the starter at this Power 4 school. You're even seeing, P4 schools dealing with that. I mean, how many times last year would I watch a Cal game and you'd see Twitter saying, oh, the next Miami quarterback, Jaron Chiave-Songapolotelli, having a great night tonight in this ACC after dark. So the portal has certainly allowed for schools that have done a terrible job of evaluating and an even worse job of developing get bailed out by getting a player that somebody else evaluated and was able to develop. But the reality is, without schools shutting down their football programs, those schools are still having to sign players. So recruiting, it's just moved the calendar a little bit. It's moved the goalposts a little bit, and it's recalibrated the expectations of maybe that next tier of player who in the old days might have been a late add to a class. He might be going down a level to start.
Brandon, we appreciate the time, the perspective, and all the energy. Just remember the Herm Edwards rule when we have you back on.
Noted, and will never happen again.
Thank you, Brandon. Brandon Huffman, National Recruiting Analyst for On3.com and Rivals. You can read his stuff online. Thanks to him for joining us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, your feedback. A lot of people with a lot of things to say about Walker Kessler and about Nurkic and the Jazz center position. And we'll get to that next. Stay with us.
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.
Best thing that's ever happened to you financially. Go.
Easy. Sold my car on Carvana. Amazing offer.
Really? I hit 200 on a scratcher.
Did the scratcher come to your house and hand you a check?
No.
How many scratchers did you hit to get that? I hit a button on Carvana.com once.
Okay, that's fair.
It's like the lottery, except you always win.
Not like the lottery at all, actually.
Exactly. Inexplicably good. Offers worth bragging about. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.